Long before modern highways, airports, and digital maps, ancient roads carried the pulse of entire empires across deserts, mountains, rivers, and forgotten cities. These routes moved soldiers, merchants, spies, pilgrims, disease, wealth, and fear. Some roads built civilizations, others helped bring them down, and even now, beneath dust, stone, and modern streets, their traces still remain. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. If this is the kind of history and mystery you enjoy, the road is almost gone now, but not entirely. In the low light before sunrise, when the desert stones still hold the cold of the night, a faint line runs across the earth like a scar that refuses to heal. It does not look like much at first. There is no towering gate, no carved king, no palace wall catching the sun. Only a shallow ridge, a strip of harder ground, a strange straightness cutting through gravel, salt, scrub, and wind-polished stone. Yet once, feet passed here by the thousands. Hooves struck sparks from the rock, wheels groaned under timber, copper, grain, incense, lapis, silver, silk, soldiers, prisoners, letters, taxes, and news of wars that would change maps. Men with different gods and different languages moved along this line, some knowing exactly where they were going, others simply following the old track because countless people before them had already worn a decision into the land. Long after the empire's collapse, the roads remain, cities can be burned, temples stripped, archives buried, royal names broken from monuments. But a road is harder to erase because it is not only built once, it is built again every time someone uses it. The mark becomes habit, habit becomes geography, geography becomes power, and when the power is gone, when the guards vanish from the gates and the tax stations fall silent, the road may still lie beneath dust, beneath fields, beneath modern asphalt, beneath a shepherd's path that no one thinks to question. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, if this is the kind of history and mystery you enjoy. Because the story of these ancient roads is not only the story of movement, it is the story of how vanished worlds once held themselves together. Some of the oldest roads do not announce themselves with stone, they appear as shadows. Archaeologists find them from the air as pale lines crossing darker soil, or as slight rises where compacted earth resists erosion better than the ground around it. In dry regions, they may survive as braided tracks, each one formed when travellers avoided mud, sand, broken wheels, or the bones of earlier journeys in Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, Central Asia, and the Americas. Researchers have found road traces that outlast the states that depended on them. Sometimes they are preserved by accident. A desert forgets slowly. A frozen pass keeps marks no plough can reach. A buried road beneath a later city can wait for centuries until a construction trench opens the past like a wound. The evidence remains incomplete, but what survives in the record suggests that ancient roads were never merely empty spaces between important places. They were important places. A road can tell a story even when no written account survives. Its width may hint at carts, armies, pack animals, or ceremonial processions. Its paving may reveal wealth, ambition, or imperial discipline. Its rest stations may show how far people were expected to travel in a day. Its broken milestones may preserve names of rulers who wanted every mile to remind travellers who commanded the land. Its direction may explain why one city became rich, while another remained a village. A bend in a route may preserve an older river crossing long after the river has shifted away. A line of forts may expose a frontier. A scatter of coins can reveal who passed there, what they carried, and how far their world extended. Roads are archives without pages, and they often keep their secrets in patterns rather than words. This is why ancient roads feel so haunting. They're among the most practical things humans ever made, yet they can become strangely ghostly. They were built for movement, noise, urgency, and repetition, but they survive in silence. A Roman road may lie under a lane where sheep now graze. A Persian imperial route may be reduced to a memory in the landscape. A caravan trail across a desert may be marked only by collapsed wells, pottery shards, and the bones of animals that did not reach the next oasis. In the Andes, raised paths and stone steps once tied highland communities to valleys and coastlines. In the Mediterranean, roads led to ports where ships carried goods onward across what were, in effect, sea roads, across Asia. No single road carried silk from end to end, yet many roads together formed a nervous system of exchange so vast that even distant kingdoms felt its pulse. The lost empires connected by these routes were not always lost in the same way. Some fell suddenly under invasion or civil war. Others faded slowly as trade shifted. Rivers changed course, soils exhausted, forests disappeared, or climate placed pressure on fragile systems. Some left inscriptions and chronicles. Others left only ruins and the stubborn geometry of roads. Scholars still debate how much roads caused expansion, and how much they simply followed expansion after it had already begun. No single explanation fully accounts for this, because roads are both cause and consequence. A ruler builds a road to control a province, but once the road exists, merchants, migrants, soldiers, rebels, pilgrims, smugglers, and diseases may use it in ways no ruler can fully command. That contradiction is one of the deepest mysteries of ancient roads. They make empires stronger by shortening distance. Orders move faster, armies arrive sooner, grain reaches hungry capitals, taxes flow with less delay. Diplomats and spies can cross enormous territories with surprising speed, but the same road that carries a king's command can carry news of weakness. The same bridge that helps a legion march outward can help an enemy march inward. The same caravan route that enriches a city can bring plague, panic, and rumour. Roads are promises of connection, but connection is never harmless. It changes the places it touches. It brings wealth, and it brings dependence. It brings ideas, and it brings unrest. It allows a world to grow larger, but it can also make that world more vulnerable. There is a lesser-known detail hidden in many ancient road systems. Some of their most important sections were not built where travel was easiest, but where control was most necessary. A route might climb a difficult ridge to avoid floodplain ambushes. It might pass near forts, wells, mines, temples, or administrative centres rather than follow the shortest path. It might be straight not because straightness was practical everywhere, but because straightness expressed authority. To impose a line across rough land is to make a political statement. It says that the landscape has been measured, claimed, and forced into service. Yet over time, even the most official road becomes human again. Farmers use it, children cross it, lovers meet near it. Refugees flee along it, traders sleep beside it, listening for animals, bandits, or soldiers in the dark. And then, slowly, the empire disappears. The watchtower roof collapses. The relay horses are no longer replaced. The bridge stones are taken for village walls. The inn becomes a ruin, then a mound, then a place where grass grows differently. The road loses its guards before it loses its direction. For a while, people still use it because old roads remain useful even after old governments die. Then another route becomes safer, or a river silts up, or a border closes, or a market shifts. And the road begins to empty, wind fills its ruts, sand covers its edges, forest roots break its paving. The memory of its name may survive in a village, a field boundary, a pilgrim tale, or a road that seems oddly ancient for reasons no one locally explains. This is where the story begins, not with a map of bright lines, but with the strange survival of paths after the worlds around them have fallen away. Beneath the dust of deserts, under the stones of ruined cities, across mountain passes where snow hides and reveals the past each year. The old roads still wait. They connect places that no longer speak the same language, kingdoms that no longer exist, and human ambitions that seem both distant and familiar. To follow them is to follow the hidden skeleton of history itself, the structure beneath the vanished flesh of empire. Before any king orders stones to be laid across a province, before engineers measure distances with rods and surveyors mark the land, a road begins as something humbler. It begins as a repeated choice. A hunter follows the same gap between hills because animals pass there. A family moves along a riverbank because water, fish, reeds, and soft ground make survival easier. Herders guide sheep and goats between winter shelter and summer pasture, wearing thin lines into slopes that will outlast them. Traders avoid marsh, cliffs, and hostile valleys, learning from those who came before them which crossings are safe, which wells turn bitter, which ridges give warning of strangers. No one calls these paths a road at first. They are simply the way. Long before empires need roads, bodies need them, feet need dependable ground, animals need grass and water, communities need salt, stone, shells, timber, pigments, obsidian, copper, and grain that cannot be found everywhere at once. The oldest human roots probably formed from necessity rather than design, and because the evidence remains incomplete, scholars still debate how much can be reconstructed from scattered artifacts alone. But what survives in the record suggests that prehistoric landscapes were already crossed by networks of movement thousands of years before formal states appear. A flint tool found far from its geological source. A bead made from marine shell discovered deep inland. A piece of obsidian traced chemically to a specific volcanic region. These are not just objects. They are signs of distance overcome. Some of these early routes follow rivers, because rivers are the first great roads that humans do not have to build. A river gives direction, water, food, reeds for mats, clay for vessels, and fertile ground where people can stop. It also carries boats, rafts, and messages faster than feet can travel. In the Nile Valley, in Mesopotamia, along the Indus, beside the Yellow River, and in countless smaller valleys, movement by water shapes the earliest patterns of settlement. Yet rivers are never simple gifts. They flood, shift, divide, and sometimes trap communities within their own fertile corridors. The land routes beside them become just as important as the water itself. Paths rise along levees, skirt seasonal marshes, and lead to places where river crossings are possible. A ford can become a meeting point can become a market can become a town. Other early roads form in harsher places, where movement is more dangerous and therefore more memorable. In deserts, a route is not drawn as a straight line across empty sand. It is stitched from water to water. The path bends towards springs, seasonal pools, salt pans, shade, and known camps. A traveller may cross a wide emptiness, but the real road is a chain of survivable points. One wrong decision can mean thirst, and so memory becomes infrastructure. The names of wells, the shape of distant hills, the colour of stone at a pass, the direction of prevailing wind, all become part of the road before anyone builds a marker. A lesser-known truth about many ancient desert routes is that their most important technology was not the track itself, but the knowledge of when not to travel, which months bring killing heat, which valleys flood suddenly, which stars guide movement at night, and which wells fail after poor rains. Mountains create another kind of early road. They seem like barriers, but they also concentrate movement. A mountain chain may have only a few reliable passes, and over generations those passes gather stories, offerings, graves, and danger. People carry goods through them not because it is easy, but because what lies on the other side is different enough to matter. Highland communities exchange wool, metals, animals, herbs, timber, and stone with lowland farmers. In some regions, people moving seasonally with herds create repeated tracks that become older than many kingdoms. These are not imperial highways. They are living rhythms. The same slopes are crossed in spring, crossed again in autumn, and the road is renewed by the calendar. There is something deeply human in this. Roads appear where memory becomes shared. One person can discover a useful path, but a road requires repetition by many. It requires trust, warning, imitation, and sometimes ritual. Certain stones may be used as markers. Cairns may grow where travellers add a rock in passing. Sacred trees, springs, graves, or hilltops may become points of orientation. What later looks like a practical route may have carried layers of meaning invisible to modern eyes. A path to a seasonal pasture might also be a path to ancestral burial grounds. A trail to a mine might pass a shrine where travellers ask protection. Scholars still debate how much ritual shaped early movement, but it is clear that ancient people did not separate landscape, memory, danger, and belief as neatly as modern maps do. Trade makes these paths longer. At first, exchange may happen between neighbouring groups, each passing goods only a short distance. Over time, a material can travel far beyond the people who first collected it. Obsidian from Anatolia reaches communities that never saw the volcano where it formed. Baltic amber travels south. Marine shells move inland. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan appears in royal and ritual contexts far to the west. These movements do not require one merchant walking the entire distance. Often, goods pass hand to hand through many communities, gaining value as they move. The road, in this sense, is not always a single travelled line. It is a chain of relationships. It is trust mixed with suspicion, hospitality mixed with bargaining, curiosity mixed with need. Migration also lays roads before empire. People move because climates shift, soils weaken, herds wander, rivers dry, populations grow, enemies press, or opportunity appears beyond the familiar horizon. Some movements are slow enough to seem like expansion rather than flight. Others may be sudden, driven by drought, conflict, or collapse. The evidence for these movements comes from archaeology, ancient DNA, language patterns, and environmental data. But no single explanation fully accounts for every migration. People rarely move for only one reason. Hunger, fear, marriage, ambition, trade, and belief can all travel together. As families move, they do not simply cross landscapes. They carry crops, animals, tools, stories, and diseases. They leave behind graves, hearths, broken pottery, and new lines of contact. By the time the first great states rise, the land is already webbed with these older ways. Rulers do not invent movement from nothing. They inherit it. They seize the herders' tracks, the traders' crossings, the river paths, the desert chains of wells, the mountain passes, and the sacred trails. They widen some, guard others, tax many, and forget a few. What had once been local knowledge becomes political opportunity. The empire looks at the path and sees a future road. But beneath every royal highway, beneath every paved military route and every official relay station, there is an older human pattern someone once found a way through, and someone else followed. When rulers finally begin to claim the older paths, they do not transform them all at once. The change is gradual, uneven, and often hidden beneath the language of order. A trail that once belonged to herders becomes a route watched by officials. A river crossing where traders once bargained under open sky becomes a tax checkpoint. A track between villages is widened because grain must move toward a palace. Soldiers must reach a frontier, and messages must travel faster than rumour. The first great road systems are not born from a single invention. They emerge when power discovers that distance is both its enemy and its opportunity. In Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates teaches rulers this lesson early. Cities rise in a world of canals, mud brick walls, reed marshes, fields, and shifting rivers, and their survival depends on movement as much as irrigation. Grain, wool, timber, stone, metals, and labour must be pulled through a landscape that can be rich in food yet poor in many building materials. The great cities of Sumer and later Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian power do not stand alone like isolated islands of brick. They are tied to surrounding villages, temple estates, river ports, caravan tracks, and administrative centres. Many of their roads would not impress a later Roman engineer. They may be beaten earthways, levee paths, canal-side tracks, and routes between gates, yet they carry the machinery of early civilization scribes, merchants, tribute, livestock, soldiers, and clay tablets sealed with authority. One surprising detail is how often the earliest evidence for organized movement appears not as grand pavement, but as accounting. Clay tablets record deliveries, workers, animals, rations, and goods in motion. A road can be visible in writing before it is visible in stone. When a palace or temple records barley sent out, sheep counted, copper received, messengers dispatched, or labourers reassigned, it reveals a landscape being connected by obligation. Scholars still debate how much of this movement should be imagined as state-controlled road traffic in the later imperial sense, because the evidence remains incomplete and varies from city to city. But what survives in the record suggests that administration itself creates routes. A government that counts must also move what it counts. Egypt offers a different pattern. The Nile is the obvious spine, a north-south artery so powerful that roads might seem secondary. Boats move grain, stone, officials, priests, soldiers, and royal monuments along the river's seasonal rhythm. Yet the desert on both sides holds resources the valley needs: gold, copper, turquoise, hard stone, alabaster, basalt, and routes toward the Red Sea, Nubia, and the Sinai. Across these dry expanses, Egyptians cut and use desert tracks that are as crucial as river travel. Expeditions move from the Nile Valley into quarry lands and mining zones, leaving inscriptions, camps, cairns, and sometimes rough roads where sledges or heavily loaded parties passed. The famous movement of stone for pyramids and temples depends on waterways, ramps, labour organisation, and land routes working together, not on any single miracle of engineering. Some Egyptian desert roads are haunting because they cross landscapes that seem almost empty today, yet once carried official expeditions with scribes, guards, workers, donkeys, water skins, and food supplies. In places such as the Western Desert and routes toward oasis regions, Ancient paths link the Nile to pockets of life beyond the floodplain. These roads are fragile in a different way from paved highways. They depend on wells, way stations, and memory of terrain. What survives can be only pottery scatters, stone alignments, or inscriptions left by officials who wanted their presence remembered in a place where forgetting was dangerously easy. No single explanation fully accounts for why some desert routes flourished at certain times and faded at others, but climate, political security, resource demand, and administrative strength all play a part. Farther north and west, across Anatolia and the lands between the Aegean, Mesopotamia, and the Iranian plateau, roads become the connective tissue between worlds that are culturally distinct but never truly separate. Anatolia is a bridge, though not an easy one. Its mountains, plateaus, river valleys, and passes shape movement with a firm hand. Long before later empires make these routes famous, merchants carry metals, textiles, and luxury goods through difficult corridors. The Assyrian trading colonies in Anatolia, especially in the early 2nd millennium BCE, leave a remarkable paper trail written not on paper but clay. Their tablets reveal merchants moving tin, textiles, silver, debts, contracts, and family business across long distances. Behind these records is a world of pack animals, caravan risks, local rulers, tolls, and negotiated protection. This is where roads begin to show their double nature again. They carry wealth, but they also carry dependence. A city rich in trade must keep routes open. A king who controls a pass can tax movement without producing the goods himself. A merchant who knows the safe path possesses a kind of power that cannot be carved on a throne. Roads do not merely serve empires, they help decide where empires can grow. The Hittite world in Anatolia, later interacting with Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia, depends on routes through rugged country for military campaigns, diplomacy, tribute, and communication. Chariots and armies may appear in royal images, but behind every campaign lies the less glamorous problem of moving food, fodder, equipment, and orders through land that resists easy control. The Assyrians, especially in their later imperial phases, pushed this logic toward a harsher efficiency. Their empire needs roads for soldiers, deported populations, royal messages, tribute, and intimidation. Relief show conquest and punishment. But the administrative reality behind them is movement. Armies must arrive before rebellion spreads. Governors must report. Tribute must reach the center. Skilled workers and conquered peoples are relocated, often violently, along routes that tie distant provinces to Assyrian power. These movements are not abstract. They mean dust in the throat, families uprooted, guards watching columns of people, and officials turning human displacement into policy. The roads of empire are rarely innocent. By the time large territorial states become common across the ancient Near East, the road has changed from path to instrument. It still follows older lines of convenience, but now it is watched, measured, taxed, and militarized. Gates, stations, crossings, forts, and storehouses appear where movement needs supervision. The first great road systems do not yet form one perfect web across the ancient world, and it would be misleading to imagine them as modern highways with neat borders and permanent surfaces. They are patchworks river routes, dirt tracks, stone-paved sections, caravan ways, canal paths, desert roads, mountain passes, and local lanes pulled together by ambition. The old human habit of following the easiest way remains underneath it all, but power adds a new demand. The road must not only lead somewhere, it must obey, and once that idea takes hold, it prepares the ground for one of the most famous imperial arteries in history, a road so closely associated with royal command that later generations remember it not merely as a route, but as a statement of empire stretched across the earth. The road that later generations remember as the Persian Royal Road does not appear in an empty world. It rises from older tracks, older crossings, older habits of travel across Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and the Iranian plateau. But under the Achaemenid kings it becomes something larger than the sum of its parts. It becomes a royal artery, a corridor of command stretching across an empire so wide that distance itself becomes a political problem. From the Aegean edge of Anatolia toward the great centres of Mesopotamia and beyond, the road helps bind together lands of different languages, gods, laws, climates, and memories. The Persian Empire does not erase this diversity. In many places, it governs by using it, absorbing local elites, older cities, existing trade routes, and inherited systems of taxation. Yet none of that can function if messages crawl too slowly through the landscape. A king may claim to rule from sea to mountains and from desert to river, but the claim only matters if orders can reach the provinces before events outrun authority. The royal road is often described as a marvel of speed, and in a world where most movement depends on feet, hooves, and river currents, speed is not a small thing. Relay stations, mounted couriers, guarded segments, and prepared resting places allow royal messages to move far faster than an ordinary traveller could manage. The famous accounts from Greek writers describe Persian couriers with admiration, emphasizing their endurance through weather, darkness, and distance. Those accounts are shaped by outside perspectives, and scholars still debate the exact organization, length, and daily operation of the system in different periods. But the central truth remains strong. The Achaemenid kings understand that communication is a form of power. A road does not need to be beautiful to be revolutionary. It needs to reduce uncertainty. To imagine this road only as a neat line on a map is to misunderstand it. It passes through changing worlds. In western Anatolia, it approaches cities touched by Greek, Lydian, and older Anatolian traditions. It crosses plateau country where weather can turn harsh, and open land can leave travellers exposed. It moves toward river valleys, fortified places, administrative centres, and older nodes of exchange. Farther east and southeast, it connects with the heartlands of imperial rule, where Babylonian scribal traditions, Elamite administration, Persian royal ideology, and many local systems overlap. Along such a route, a traveller might hear several languages in a single week. Aramaic, used widely in administration, helps messages cross these boundaries, but the spoken world remains thick with local tongues. The empire is not a single voice. It is a chorus made manageable by roads, records, seals, and officials. One lesser-known detail is that the royal road is not only about the movement of royal letters, it also reveals a deeper imperial method, the careful conversion of distance into stages. An empire too large to feel intimate becomes governable when broken into days of travel, stations, provinces, tax districts, and reporting lines. A messenger does not experience the empire as a grand idea. He experiences it as the next horse, the next post, the next guarded crossing, the next official seal that proves he has the right to move with urgency. This is how vastness becomes practical. The road turns space into sequence. It allows the centre to imagine the edges not as unreachable horizons, but as places measured by time. Yet even this famous road was not a modern highway. Some stretches may have been improved, guarded, bridged, or maintained with special care, while others likely followed existing regional routes. Surfaces would vary, so would safety, speed, and comfort, the evidence remains incomplete, and it would be too simple to picture one perfectly paved road running across the empire like a stone ribbon. What survives in the record suggests a system rather than a single engineered object, a chain of routes, stations, administrative practices, local obligations, and royal priorities. The road's power comes not merely from construction, but from coordination. Many ancient states could build impressive things. Fewer could make distance behave. The human world along the royal road is just as important as the royal one. Merchants benefit from the security that imperial routes can provide, though they may also suffer from tolls, inspections, and the demands of officials. Soldiers move along it when rebellion threatens or campaigns begin. Envoys carry delicate messages between rulers, satraps, and subject peoples. Tax revenues, luxury goods, horses, textiles, precious metals, and intelligence move through the same broad corridors. At stations, strangers meet under the shadow of authority. A courier with a royal order may pass a caravan delayed by broken harness. A local farmer may watch men from distant provinces ride through and understand, without reading a document, that he lives inside something enormous. The Achaemenid system also exposes the difference between connection and unity. The royal road helps hold the empire together, but it does not make every province feel Persian in the same way. Egypt remains Egypt in many of its customs. Babylon remains heavy with older prestige. Anatolian cities keep memories of former kingdoms and local loyalties. The road carries royal command across them, but it also carries knowledge of their differences back to the centre. Satraps, the imperial governors, depend on reports, tribute, military support, and delicate balances with local powers. A road can bring the king closer, but it can also remind every province how far away the king actually is. This tension becomes clearer when conflict comes. Roads that allow messages to move quickly also reveal the points where empire is vulnerable. A revolt in a province is dangerous not only because it challenges authority locally, but because it threatens the lines that connect the imperial body. Control of stations, passes, bridges, and cities along major routes can decide whether royal power responds swiftly or stumbles. No single explanation fully accounts for the endurance of the Achaemenid Empire, nor for the shocks that eventually weaken it, but its roads and communication systems are part of the reason it can rule so widely for so long. They do not make rebellion impossible. They make response imaginable. There is also a psychological force in such a road. To travel it is to feel empire in physical form. The repeated stations, the officials, the seals, the recognized stages, the protected movement of royal messages, all create a sense that authority continues beyond the horizon. A ruler who cannot be seen can still be felt. His command arrives on horseback. His taxes are expected. His messengers do not stop simply because the night is cold or the rain is heavy. Even the landscape seems recruited into rule. But the royal road is not immortal. No road is. Later powers inherit, modify, ignore, or overwrite it. Macedonian armies, Hellenistic kingdoms, Roman authorities, Parthian and Sasanian powers, Byzantine and Islamic routes, medieval caravans, and modern roads all move across parts of the same broad geography in different ways. The Persian road survives less as one intact monument than as a memory of how an empire learned to think across distance. It proves that a road can be more than a path between cities. It can be a technology of rule, a political nervous system, and a warning that once humans learn how to connect far places, the world can never become small again in quite the same way. Rome takes the old truth of roads and sharpens it until it becomes almost a weapon. Long before Roman power covers the Mediterranean, movement already shapes Italy through Etruscan paths. Greek colonial routes, river crossings, hill tracks, and local roads between farms, shrines, towns, and ports. Rome does not invent the need to travel. It inherits a landscape already marked by footsteps and cartwheels. But what Rome does with roads is different in scale and intention. It turns roads into a public language of conquest. A Roman road does not merely connect one settlement to another. It announces that the land has been entered, measured, organized, and made answerable to a distant centre that expects obedience, tax, grain, soldiers, and time itself to move according to Roman needs. The Via Appia becomes the great early symbol of this transformation. Built beginning in the late 4th century BCE, it runs south from Rome toward Capua and later extends toward Brundisium, opening a hard line of movement through regions where Roman power is expanding and still contested. It is easy, from a modern distance, to admire its engineering and forget its pressure. This is not only a road for merchants and travellers, it is a road for legions. It allows troops to move faster into the south, strengthens Rome's grip over allied and conquered communities, and ties military ambition to physical infrastructure. Stone, gravel, drainage, embankments, bridges, and straight alignments become tools of strategy. Rome learns that conquest does not end when a battle is won. Conquest must be made repeatable, and roads help make that possible. The famous straightness of Roman roads is real, but it can be misunderstood. Roman engineers often prefer direct lines where terrain allows, using surveyors, sighting instruments, and disciplined planning to impose order across distance. Yet they are not foolish. Roads bend for mountains, marshes, river crossings, towns, and practical constraints. The evidence remains incomplete in many places because later roads, fields, erosion, and modern construction have damaged or buried the ancient surfaces. Still, what survives in the record suggests a remarkable consistency of purpose. A Roman road is designed to endure use, drain water, support military movement, and display authority. Its layers may include prepared foundations, compacted material, stones, gravel, and paving slabs, though construction varies across regions. Not every Roman road looks like the idealized stone pavement shown in textbooks. Some are grand and monumental, others are simpler, local, and adapted to available materials. The empire is too large for one perfect model. Milestones bring another kind of power to the road. They do not only measure distance, they measure rule. A traveller passing a milestone sees not merely how far he is from a city, but under whose authority the road has been made or repaired. Imperial names carved into stone turn geography into propaganda. Even maintenance becomes memory. A repaired road can praise an emperor as effectively as a statue, because every cart, soldier, official, and pilgrim passing by encounters the claim that Rome provides order. This is one of the lesser-known strengths of Roman infrastructure. It makes power ordinary. The empire is not present only in palaces, temples, and military camps. It is present underfoot. The roads transform the economy as much as the army. Italy, Gaul, Hispania, North Africa, the Balkans, Asia Minor, Syria, and Britain are not connected only by conquest but by movement repeated day after day. Olive oil, wine, grain, ceramics, metals, salt, timber, livestock, glass, slaves, letters, legal documents, and rumours move along land routes that feed into ports and river systems. Roads help inland places reach the wider Roman world. A farm can become profitable because a market is reachable. A town can grow because it sits at a crossing. A military camp can become a settlement, then a city. No single explanation fully accounts for urban growth across the Roman world, but roads often create the conditions in which growth becomes possible. Yet Roman roads are not peaceful by nature. Their beauty, when they survive, can distract from the violence they often serve. Legions march on them, prisoners are driven along them, tax collectors use them, governors arrive by them, rebellion is answered through them. The same route that brings imported pottery and news from the capital can bring punishment. After revolts, roads may carry soldiers toward burning towns and captives away from their homes. The road is not cruel by itself, but it gives organized power a longer reach. It reduces the shelter that distance once offered. The imperial communication system deepens this reach. The cursus publicus, the official transport and messaging network of the Roman state, depends on stations, animals, permissions, and administrative control. It is not a public postal service in the modern sense, and scholars still debate its development and operation across different periods. But its purpose is clear enough. The state needs messages, officials, and urgent business to move with reliability. A governor in a distant province is still tied to Rome, or later to whichever imperial centre commands him, by documents and roads. News cannot travel instantly, but it can travel in a disciplined way. In an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt and from the Atlantic to the Near East, discipline across distance becomes survival. There is a strange intimacy in these roads. They carry the empire's largest ambitions, but they also shape small human lives. A merchant times his journey by known stations. A soldier counts milestones on the way to a frontier he has never seen. A widow walks to a town to settle a legal matter. A pilgrim follows a route toward a shrine. A mason repairs a culvert because winter rain has begun to eat the roadbed. A child grows up beside a road where strangers from distant provinces pass with accents, clothing, animals, and goods that make the world seem larger than the village fields. Roads make empire visible not as an abstract map, but as daily interruption. And still, Rome's road system contains the same contradiction that haunted Persia's. Roads strengthen the empire, but they also expose it. Enemies learn the routes, invaders use the bridges. Civil wars move quickly because rival armies can march along the same lines built for imperial defense. Plague, too, follows connection. Economic stress travels with tax demands. Political instability rides faster when the arteries are already open. Roads make Rome powerful because they bind its world together. Yet the more tightly a world is bound, the more easily shock can move through it. What Rome builds to control distance also creates a shared vulnerability across distance. When Roman authority weakens in the western provinces, many roads do not vanish immediately. People still use them because they remain useful. Local rulers, bishops, merchants, farmers, armies, and travellers inherit the hard lines left by empire. Some roads decay. Some are robbed for stone. Some become medieval routes. Some lie beneath modern highways, so deeply absorbed into later life that their Roman origin is almost hidden in plain sight. This may be Rome's most enduring victory. Its roads survive not only as ruins, but as habits of movement. Even after the empire fractures, the land remembers the direction Rome taught it to take. Beyond the paved roads and imperial milestones, another kind of road crosses the ancient world. Less visible, but no less powerful. It has no continuous stone surface, no straight Roman discipline, no royal posts at regular intervals, and in many places no roadbed at all. It appears as a string of wells, a memory of safe camps, a line of stars, a chain of oases, a habit carried in the minds of guides who know where the land can kill and where it may allow passage. These are the caravan roads, and they connect empires across spaces where formal highways would have been too expensive, too fragile, or simply impossible to maintain. In deserts, steppe margins, salt flats, and dry plateaus, the road is not built so much as remembered. A desert road is an agreement with danger. It cannot be treated like an empty space between two cities, because the emptiness is the main force shaping every decision. Travellers do not move wherever they wish. They move where water permits, where animals can endure, where winds do not erase tracks too quickly, where hostile terrain can be crossed before thirst becomes stronger than discipline. In the Sahara, Arabian deserts, Iranian deserts, Syrian steppe, and the dry corridors of Central Asia, caravans do not conquer distance by ignoring nature. They survive by negotiating with it. The route bends toward wells, seasonal pastures, caravanserais, forts, market towns, and sacred places where travellers can rest under some form of protection. What looks on a map like a line across nothing is, on the ground, a sequence of narrow chances. The camel changes the history of these roads, though not everywhere at once, and not in a simple dramatic instant. In parts of the Near East, Arabia, and North Africa, the increasing use of camels makes long-distance desert movement more efficient than it had been with donkeys, horses, or oxen alone. Camels can carry heavy loads, endure thirst, and feed on rough vegetation that would not sustain many other pack animals. This does not make desert travel easy. It makes it possible at a larger scale. Scholars still debate the timing and regional details of camel domestication and its spread into different trading systems. But what survives in the record suggests that camel caravans helped reshape trade across harsh landscapes, especially where water was scattered and roads could not be maintained in the Roman or Persian style. Caravans carry goods that seem almost weightless in value compared with their physical size: incense, spices, aromatics, dyes, gems, medicines, fine textiles, ivory, gold, salt, and later silk, paper, and religious objects. Some goods move because they are rare, others move because they are necessary. Salt, for example, may lack the glamour of silk or frankincense, but in many ancient and medieval economies it is essential for diet, animal health, and preserving food. A block of salt crossing a desert can be as meaningful as a chest of silver. In some regions, salt routes become lifelines for entire communities, and control over them brings wealth that outsiders may underestimate. This is one of the lesser-known truths of caravan history. Luxury and survival often travel on the same animal. The incense routes of southern Arabia show how a landscape that seems remote can become central to distant empires. Frankincense and myrrh, harvested from trees in Arabia and the Horn of Africa, move northward through caravan networks toward the Mediterranean, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond. These aromatics burn in temples, funerals, homes, and royal rituals. They scent the air of power. They turn desert tracks into corridors of wealth. Kingdoms and towns along these routes rise partly because they control movement through dry country. Yet the evidence remains incomplete, and no single explanation fully accounts for the prosperity and decline of every settlement tied to the incense trade. Shifting demand, maritime competition, political conflict, environmental stress, and changing imperial borders all likely play roles. Across the Syrian and Arabian desert margins, caravan cities become strange hybrids of isolation and connection. Places such as Palmyra, Petra, and other trading centres stand at the meeting point of empire and wilderness, stone and sand, local identity and international exchange. Petra, carved into rose-coloured rock and fed by carefully managed water systems, is not merely a romantic ruin. It is a city shaped by control of routes, water, and exchange. Palmyra, with its mix of local. Greco-Roman and Eastern influences grows rich because it sits between worlds. Its merchants understand that a caravan road does not belong fully to any one empire. It belongs to those who can keep it open, negotiate its dangers, and profit from its uncertainties. Unlike the Roman road, the caravan route often depends more on social infrastructure than physical construction. Trust matters, protection matters, agreements with tribes, local rulers, oasis communities, guards, and guides may be more important than paving. A caravan is not simply a group of merchants walking together. It is a moving community with hierarchy, animals, servants, guards, interpreters, accountants, cooks, and sometimes pilgrims or envoys travelling under its protection. It moves at the pace of animals and water. It wakes before heat becomes cruel, rests when necessary, and watches the horizon for dust that might mean weather, raiders, or another caravan. At night, the stars become part of the road, and silence can be as important as speech. These routes also move ideas with unusual subtlety. A soldier on a Roman road may know he marches under orders, but a trader on a desert route carries more than goods without always intending to. Religious practices, artistic motifs, technologies, stories, coins, weights, diseases, and rumours travel through caravan worlds. A shrine near a route may absorb foreign influences. A local craft may change because imported goods alter taste. A language used for trade may spread farther than political control. The caravan road is therefore both fragile and powerful. It may vanish if wells fail or politics break down, yet while it works, it can connect places that no army could easily hold. The mystery of these roads is that so much of them leave so little trace. A paved road breaks, but its stones may remain. A caravan road may disappear when its wells collapse, its guides die, or its markets shift elsewhere. Archaeologists look for pottery scatters, animal bones, inscriptions, camp remains, fortlets, water installations, and satellite traces of repeated movement. Sometimes the route survives in oral tradition, in their place names, or in later pilgrim roads that reuse older corridors. But many tracks have faded into desert surfaces that seem untouched. What survives in the record suggests a vast history of motion only partly visible, a history carried for centuries in memory more than masonry. And yet these roads without pavement connected empires just as surely as stone highways did. They brought Roman buyers into contact with Arabian incense, Mesopotamian markets with Iranian plateaus, Mediterranean ports with desert interiors, African gold and salt with northern demand, and oasis towns with imperial courts. They prove that the ancient world was not connected only where states could build. It was connected wherever people learned how to cross danger together. The road, in its deepest form, was not always a structure on the ground. Sometimes it was a promise that somewhere beyond the heat, the dust, and the long silence, another human settlement waited with water. From the desert roads, the story widens into a name that has become almost too famous for its own good, the Silk Road. The phrase makes it sound like one long ribbon stretching neatly from China to the Mediterranean, as if a traveller could stand at one end, step onto a marked path, and simply follow it west until Rome, Antioch, or Constantinople appeared on the horizon. But the ancient reality is stranger, messier, and far more interesting. There was no single Silk Road in the way a modern person might imagine a highway. There were many roads, many branches, many interruptions, many middlemen, many dangerous crossings, and many worlds that touched one another without fully understanding the whole system they were part of. Silk gives the network its later name because silk was light, valuable, mysterious, and desired by elites far beyond the places where it was produced. But silk was never the only thing moving. Horses, jade, glass, spices, metals, wool, paper, medicines, dyes, furs, grapes, musical instruments, religious texts, artistic styles, and stories all travel through the corridors. So do people who do not fit neatly into one category: merchants, monks, envoys, translators, soldiers, slaves, refugees, craftsmen, guides, and officials. The roads crossing Central Asia are not only trade routes, they are routes of borrowing, misunderstanding, adaptation, and transformation. The geography itself refuses simplicity. Between the great agrarian civilizations of East Asia, South Asia, Iran, and the Mediterranean lie deserts, mountain ranges, grasslands, river basins, and oasis chains. The Taklamakan Desert does not invite casual travel. Its very name is often surrounded by dramatic interpretations, but whatever the exact linguistic origin, the landscape itself is enough to explain its reputation. Sand, dryness, heat, cold, and distance make movement dangerous. Travellers move around its edges, through oasis towns that become lifelines, places where water, food, animals, information, and protection can be found. To the south rise the Himalayas, Karakoram, and Pamir regions, where altitude turns travel into endurance. To the north stretch steppe worlds where mounted peoples move with a freedom that settled empires often fear and need at the same time. One lesser-known detail is that some of the most important Silk Road places were not huge capitals, but oasis towns whose power came from being unavoidable. A settlement with reliable water at the edge of a desert can become more important than its size suggests. It can tax caravans, host translators, store goods, shelter monks, and collect rumours from both directions. Dunhuang, Khotan, Kashgar, Turfan, Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, and many others occupy different positions in this wider web. And each has its own history rather than merely serving as a stop on someone else's journey. In these places, the road is not empty space between empires, it is a world of its own. The Silk Roads also reveal how indirect ancient connection often was. A piece of silk might travel thousands of kilometres, but not necessarily with the same merchant. Goods pass from hand to hand, through languages and currencies, across political borders and ecological zones. A Roman buyer may desire silk without knowing the full reality of Chinese sericulture. A Chinese court may value Western horses without directly controlling the lands that breed them. Central Asian merchants, especially Sogdian traders in later antiquity and the early medieval period, become masters of the middle spaces. They speak across cultures, organize caravans, carry letters, and help goods move through a world where trust is always partial. Scholars still debate the exact scale and rhythm of trade in different centuries, because the evidence remains uneven, but what survives in the record suggests that middlemen were not marginal. They were the system's living joints. Empires try to control these routes, but none controls them completely for long. Chinese dynasties push into the western regions to secure horses, alliances, and protection against steppe powers. Persian empires guard their corridors and profit from exchange. Hellenistic kingdoms, Kushan rulers, Parthians, Sasanians, Roman and Byzantine authorities, Turkic powers, and many local states all shape sections of the network at different times. The road shifts as power shifts. A route may become safer under one ruler, dangerous under another, then revive when a new alliance protects it. A war hundreds of miles away can change which oasis prospers. A new tax can divert merchants. A bandit problem can make an old path suddenly empty. No single explanation fully accounts for the rise and decline of every Silk Road city, because climate, politics, warfare, disease, and demand all twist together. And disease is one of the darker passengers of connection. Roads that carry luxury also carry biological risk. The exact pathways of ancient epidemics are difficult to reconstruct, and scholars still debate many details. But long-distance movement clearly helps diseases travel farther than isolated communities would allow. Merchants, armies, animals, fleas, rats, ships, grain stores, and crowded towns all become part of the unseen road. The same network that brings glassware, spices, Buddhist texts, and new musical forms can also bring fever and death. Connection widens imagination, but it also widens exposure. Religion moves with astonishing power along these roads. Buddhism travels from India into Central Asia and China through monks, translators, patrons, and monasteries that often stand near routes of trade and pilgrimage. Manichaeism, Christianity, Zoroastrian traditions, Islam in later centuries, and local beliefs also move through these corridors, changing as they go. A doctrine crossing mountains does not remain untouched. It is translated into new languages, painted in new styles, supported by new rulers, and blended with local expectations. The caves near Dunhuang preserve a particularly vivid memory of this world: manuscripts, paintings, devotional images, and texts in multiple languages, evidence of a crossroads where faith, travel, empire, and art meet in the dry silence of the desert edge. The Silk Roads were therefore never just about silk, and never just about roads. They were a long conversation between settled states and mobile peoples, between luxury and survival, between official diplomacy and private risk. They connected lost empires not by making them identical, but by allowing fragments of one world to appear inside another. A pattern from the east could decorate an object in the west. A horse from the steppe could alter a military system. A religious image could carry artistic influences from several cultures at once. A word could travel farther than the people who first spoke it. What makes these roads so compelling is that they show history working through distance without requiring complete knowledge. Most travellers moved through only a portion of the network. They did not see the whole. They knew the next town, the next pass, the next bargain, the next danger. Yet together their partial journeys created one of the great connective systems of the ancient world. The Silk Roads were not a single path across Asia. They were a shifting web of human decisions, fragile in every strand, powerful in their total effect, and once they existed, the old empires at either end could never again pretend that the world stopped at their borders. If a road is understood only as a strip of earth beneath the feet, then the ancient world appears less connected than it truly was. Much of its movement does not follow stone paving, desert tracks, or mountain passes. It moves over water, across surfaces that leave no wheel ruts and keep no footprints. The sea has no milestones. It does not preserve the line of a journey after the ship has passed. Yet for ancient empires, the sea is one of the greatest roads of all, wide, dangerous, changeable, and often faster than land. Ports become gates, harbours become crossroads, islands become stepping stones. A coastline becomes a corridor where goods, armies, beliefs, and diseases can move with startling speed. The Mediterranean is the clearest example, not because it is calm or simple, but because it is enclosed enough to become a shared world, while remaining dangerous enough to demand skill. Egyptians, Minoans, Mycenaeans, Phoenicians, Greeks, Carthaginians, Etruscans, Romans, and many others use its waters in different periods, building networks that make the sea feel less like a barrier than a complicated road system. Winds, currents, reefs, pirates, storms, and seasonal sailing conditions shape every route. Ancient sailors rarely treat the sea as an empty blue plain. They know coasts, headlands, islands, anchorages, sandbanks, and harbours. The road is remembered in the mind and body of the pilot, in the timing of winds, in the line of stars, and in the hard knowledge of where a ship may safely take shelter when the weather turns. Phoenician sailors and merchants show how maritime roads can connect worlds without controlling vast inland territories. From cities such as Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, they move timber, purple dye, glass, metalwork, wine, oil, luxury goods, and ideas across the eastern and western Mediterranean. Their colonies and trading stations stretch through North Africa, Sicily, Sardinia, Iberia, and beyond. Carthage, itself founded in this wider Phoenician maritime world, becomes a major power not because it possesses one continuous land highway, but because it understands sea lanes, ports, ships, and trade. A sea road does not need paving, it needs ships, skilled crews, commercial trust, naval force, and places to land. One lesser-known detail is that some ancient sea routes were shaped as much by cargo as by navigation. Heavy goods that would be painfully difficult to drag overland could move more efficiently by water. Grain, stone, timber, wine, amphorae, oil, metals, and ceramics could travel in bulk when ships and ports were available. This is why coastal and riverine connections matter so deeply to ancient economies. A city and land might require roads and pack animals, but once goods reach a port, the world changes. The sea can make distant places economically closer than nearby inland valleys, blocked by mountains or bad roads. What survives in shipwrecks? Amphora distributions, harbour remains, and ancient cargoes suggest that maritime trade formed a dense connective tissue beneath the rise of many empires. Rome understands this with extraordinary clarity. Its roads on land are famous, but its empire is also built around water. The Mediterranean becomes, in Roman thinking, almost an internal sea, though never one free from danger or disruption. Grain from Egypt and North Africa feeds Rome. Spanish metals, Eastern luxuries, Greek art, Italian wine, African oil, and soldiers move through ports and sea lanes. The city of Rome depends on maritime logistics so immense that the failure of shipments can become a political crisis. The road to Rome is not always paved. Often it is a grain ship beating across open water, then unloading at a harbour where river transport and roads take over. Land and sea routes interlock like parts of one machine. Beyond the Mediterranean, the Red Sea and Indian Ocean open another vast road system: Egyptian, South Arabian, East African, Indian, Persian, and later Roman merchants move through seasonal patterns shaped by monsoon winds. The discovery, or more accurately the increasing practical use, of monsoon sailing allows ships to cross open waters with greater confidence at certain times of year. This does not erase risk. Storms, reefs, disease, shipwreck, piracy, and political instability remain constant threats, but it changes the scale of exchange. Pepper, spices, pearls, ivory, textiles, incense, glassware, metals, and other goods move between the Roman world, Arabia, East Africa, India, and beyond. Scholars still debate the exact volume and balance of this trade across different centuries, but the evidence from texts, ports, coins, ceramics, and archaeology shows that the Indian Ocean was not a marginal edge of the ancient world. It was one of its great highways. Ports along these sea roads often become multilingual places where empire feels less solid than exchange. A harbour does not ask travellers to share one culture before they trade. It asks them to bargain, translate, measure, trust, and sometimes deceive one another well enough for goods to move. In such places, a sailor from Egypt may see Indian textiles, Arabian incense, African ivory, Roman coins, local pottery, and religious symbols from several traditions in the same crowded space. The sea road makes identity practical and flexible. People learn enough of another language to trade. They learn enough of another custom to avoid offence. They learn which weights are honest, which officials are corrupt, which captains are reckless, and which winds can be trusted more than men. Southeast Asia becomes increasingly important in these wider maritime worlds, especially as routes link India, China, island Southeast Asia, and the South China Sea. Coastal communities and port polities rise from their ability to mediate exchange rather than from commanding huge inland empires in the older sense. Goods, religions, scripts, artistic styles, and political models move along these watery roads. Hindu and Buddhist influences spread through maritime networks, reshaped by local societies rather than simply copied. Later, Islamic trade networks will also transform the region. No single explanation fully accounts for the rise of every port city or maritime kingdom, because geography, local leadership, foreign demand, ecological resources, and control of narrow passages all matter. But one pattern remains clear: a narrow strait can be as powerful as a paved imperial highway if enough ships must pass through it. The sea also carries collapse. Ship routes can spread plague, piracy, invasion, and economic shock. A harbour that thrives on trade becomes vulnerable when trade weakens. A city dependent on imported grain can panic when ships fail to arrive. Naval war can strangle an empire more quietly than a burning army on land. And because sea roads leave fewer physical traces than roads of stone, their disappearance can be harder to see. A route may fade from use because a harbour silts up. A political power falls, a coastline changes, demand shifts, ships improve, pirates grow stronger, or a new route becomes more profitable. The old sea remains, but the road across it has moved. This is the great difference between land roads and sea roads. A land road may decay in place, leaving stones, ruts, bridges, or embankments. A sea road vanishes the moment people stop sailing it. Its ruins are scattered a wreck on the seabed, an abandoned harbour, a warehouse foundation, foreign coins in a market town, amphorae far from home, a borrowed god in a coastal shrine. The evidence remains incomplete. But these fragments reveal an ancient world more fluid and connected than a map of empires alone can show. The roads between lost empires were not all underfoot. Some were written in wind, salt, sailcloth, and fear, crossing waters that erased every trace of passage except the changes left behind on distant shores. Where the sea roads vanish behind waves and wind, the mountain roads leave a different kind of silence. They climb into places where breath shortens, where snow can hide a path for months, where one wrong step can send a loaded animal into a ravine, and where weather becomes not background but judge. Ancient roads through mountains and ice are never simply routes between lowlands. They are negotiations with height, cold, stone, and fear. They compress movement into narrow passes, forcing armies. Merchants, pilgrims, migrants, and messengers through the same dangerous openings. A great empire may command plains, rivers, ports, and cities, but in the mountains, power becomes smaller. It must fit onto a ledge, wait for snowmelt, bargain with local guides, and accept that the landscape has authority of its own. Mountain routes matter because mountains divide worlds without sealing them completely. Across the Alps, the Taurus, the Zagros, the Caucasus, the Hindu Kush, the Pamirs, the Himalayas, the Andes, and countless smaller ranges. People learn where the barriers weaken. These passages become precious. A pass may decide where trade flows, where armies invade, where languages mix, and where cultures remain partly isolated. The easiest route is rarely easy. It is only easier than the alternatives. A valley that seems remote may become central because it leads to a crossing. A village at the foot of a pass may grow rich by feeding pack animals, repairing gear, hosting travellers, or guiding strangers through terrain they do not understand. The Alps show this sharply. Long before Rome dominates the Western Mediterranean, people cross these mountains with animals, goods and knowledge, salt, metals, amber, wine, livestock, and crafted objects move through alpine corridors. Later, Roman power formalizes and improves some routes, but it does not invent the crossings. It adapts them. Roads and tracks through alpine passes allow soldiers and officials to connect Italy with Gaul, the Rhine frontier, and beyond. Yet even Rome cannot make the Alps harmless. Snow, landslides, storms, and seasonal closure remain stronger than imperial confidence. Scholars still debate the precise routes of famous military crossings, including Hannibal's march into Italy, because the evidence remains incomplete, and ancient accounts do not settle every detail. But the larger point is clear mountains can turn movement into legend because survival itself becomes part of the story. Farther east, the Zagros Mountains shape the histories of Mesopotamia and Iran. For lowland empires, these mountains are both barrier and corridor, a rugged edge where control is difficult and local powers can resist central authority. Routes through the Zagros connect the plains of Mesopotamia with the Iranian plateau, but they also expose armies to ambush, weather, and supply problems. The same passes that carry trade can carry invasion. Assyrian campaigns into mountain regions reveal the strain of trying to project power into broken terrain. Reliefs and inscriptions celebrate conquest, but behind the royal claims lie hard practical problems, narrow paths, fortified hill settlements, pack animals, short campaigning seasons, and enemies who know every fold of the land. In Central Asia, mountain and steppe routes intertwine in even more complex ways. The Pamirs and the Hindu Kush are not just obstacles on the edge of the Silk Roads. They are part of the reason the network takes the shape it does. Caravans seek passes that allow movement between oasis basins, high valleys, and wider trade corridors. Some routes are so high and harsh that the road becomes a test of endurance. Cold can kill as surely as thirst. Animals weaken in thin air. Loads must be adjusted. Travellers rely on local knowledge, seasonal timing, and stopping places where shelter and fodder can be found. One lesser-known detail is that high-altitude roads often depend on small ecological windows, brief periods when snow retreats, grasses grow, and animals can survive the crossing. Miss that window, and a road that exists on a map becomes a trap. The Himalayas and their surrounding ranges create some of the most dramatic ancient routes on Earth. They separate immense cultural regions while allowing selective contact through passes, valleys, and plateau corridors. Salt, wool, tea in later periods, horses, turquoise, religious texts, metal goods, and pilgrims move through these high worlds. Buddhism travels across mountain routes into Tibet and Central Asia, carried not as a single event but through generations of translation, patronage, devotion, and political change. The evidence remains incomplete for many early movements, especially where perishable materials have not survived. But what survives in monasteries, manuscripts, art, and archaeology suggest that mountains did not stop cultural exchange. They filtered it. What passed through often emerged changed. Ice adds another layer to the mystery of roads. In cold regions and high passes, glaciers and snowfields can destroy evidence, but they can also preserve it with astonishing tenderness. Organic materials that would rot elsewhere may survive frozen leather, wood, textiles, plant fibers, even bodies. The discovery of ancient travellers and objects in alpine ice reminds us that some people who entered these high routes never came back down. Their tools, clothing, and remains can suddenly appear after thousands of years as glaciers retreat, turning climate change into an uneasy archaeologist. No single explanation fully accounts for every object found in such places. Some belong to trade, some to hunting, some to herding, some to ritual or accident, but each one proves that the frozen margins were not empty. People lived, worked, crossed, and died there. In the Andes, road building reaches a different kind of grandeur. The Inca road system, though later than many Old World ancient routes, shows what can happen when an empire grows across mountains rather than around them. Stone steps, suspension bridges, causeways, storehouses, and relay stations tie together highlands, valleys, deserts, and forests across a dramatic vertical world. Earlier Andean societies also create routes and exchange systems, but the Inca expand and organize movement on an imperial scale. Runners carry messages, llamas transport goods. Armies move through corridors that defy the idea that mountains are only barriers. The road becomes a vertical empire's spine, climbing and descending through ecological zones where potatoes, maize, textiles, coca metals, and state demands all move. Yet mountain roads also protect difference. Because movement is channeled through limited passages, communities away from major routes may preserve languages, customs, and political autonomy longer than lowland regions exposed to constant traffic. A road through a pass can connect two empires, while valleys on either side remain stubbornly local. This is one reason highland histories are so difficult to simplify. Connection and isolation exist side by side. A caravan may carry foreign silk through a pass, while a nearby village remains shaped mostly by its own seasons, ancestors, and fields. The roads through mountains and ice reveal a pattern that flat maps hide. Distance is not measured only in miles. It is measured in altitude, snow, fear, breath, fodder, and the number of days a traveller can survive before shelter fails. These routes connected lost empires not because they overcame nature completely, but because people learned where nature allowed a narrow bargain. Every pass, every frozen track, every stone stair, every high valley trail carries the memory of that bargain. And in those cold, difficult places, the road is never fully mastered. It is borrowed from the mountain for as long as the mountain permits. Where roads gather, cities often rise. Not always the largest cities, and not always the oldest, but places with a particular kind of luck: a crossing, a ford, a harbour, a pass, an oasis, a bend in a river, a point where several difficult journeys briefly become one. These cities are not born only from fertile soil or royal command. They are born from traffic. They grow because strangers must stop there, because animals need water, because merchants need storage, because officials need records, because soldiers need supplies, because pilgrims need shelter, because danger makes rest valuable. A road can turn a patch of ground into a marketplace, and over generations the marketplace can become a city whose name travels farther than its walls. Yet road cities are vulnerable in a special way. Their wealth depends on movement continuing. If the route shifts, if the wells fail, if a harbour silts up, if war makes a corridor unsafe, if a new empire redirects trade, the city can begin to fade even while its buildings still stand. The people who live there may not understand at first that history has changed direction. A few caravans arrive late. A market season is thinner than usual. A tax office collects less. A warehouse remains half empty. The innkeeper hears that merchants now prefer another pass, another port, another oasis chain. The road has not vanished, but it has begun to forget them. Petra is one of the most haunting examples of a city shaped by roots, hidden among sandstone cliffs and narrow approaches. It seems at first like a miracle of carving, a city made from rose-coloured stone and shadow. But Petra is not only an architectural wonder, it is a city of water management, desert knowledge, and caravan wealth. The Nabateans understand how to collect, channel, store, and protect water in a dry landscape, and that control allows them to support trade moving between Arabia, the Levant, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world. Incense, aromatics, spices, textiles, and other goods pass through the wider network that gives Petra its importance. The carved facades impress the eye, but the hidden cisterns and channels may explain the city more deeply. Petra's decline was not caused by one simple disaster. Scholars still debate the relative weight of changing trade patterns, Roman annexation, maritime routes, earthquakes, local political shifts, and environmental pressures. No single explanation fully accounts for the city's transformation from a thriving caravan centre into a place of ruins and memory. What survives in the record suggests a slow reorientation rather than a single fatal blow. Trade does not stop all at once. It bends. Ships begin to carry more of what caravans once moved. Regional power changes. Maintenance becomes harder. The city remains inhabited in some form for centuries, but its old role weakens. The road that made Petra extraordinary begins to move elsewhere. Palmyra offers another version of the same fragile glory. Set in the Syrian desert, it rises because it stands between empires, near routes linking the Roman world with Mesopotamia and lands beyond. It is neither simply Roman nor simply Eastern. Its art, inscriptions, religion, clothing styles, and public spaces reveal a city comfortable in mixture. Merchants from Palmyra organize long-distance caravans, sponsor monuments, and carry their city's name far across the desert world. A place that might have seemed marginal on a purely agricultural map becomes rich because it mediates movement. Palmyra's colonnades and temples are not only monuments of stone, they are frozen evidence of traffic, negotiation, and wealth drawn from the spaces between powers. But cities between empires can become dangerous to empires. Palmyra's rise to political power in the 3rd century CE, especially under Queen Zenobia, shows how a trade city can become an imperial rival when the larger world fractures. The details of motive, ambition, and local politics remain debated, and later accounts are coloured by Roman perspectives. But the broad pattern is clear. A city enriched by roads, caravans, and strategic position can suddenly become more than a stopover. It can become a claimant. Rome eventually crushes Palmyrene power, and the city never fully regains its former place. Its ruins survive like a reminder that roads do not only feed obedience, sometimes they feed ambition. Farther east, cities such as Merv and Samarkand become legendary, not because they sit at the end of the world, but because they sit in the middle of many worlds. Merv, in the Oasis region of Central Asia, grows across centuries under different powers, linked to Iranian, Central Asian, Islamic, and Silk Road histories. Samarkand becomes a jewel of exchange, scholarship, craft, and empire, shaped by its position on routes where goods and ideas pass through repeatedly. These cities prove that a crossroads can become a cultural engine. A merchant arrives with goods, but also with news. A monk arrives with texts, a craftsman brings a technique, a ruler brings patronage or conquest. Over time, the city becomes layered with influences, each layer carried by roads. Yet even the greatest road cities are not safe from interruption. Merv suffers devastating destruction during the Mongol conquests, and although life continues in the region, the old urban greatness is violently broken. Samarkand is damaged, revived, conquered, rebuilt, and transformed more than once. Central Asian cities often live in cycles of brilliance and catastrophe because their positions make them valuable. A road brings prosperity, but prosperity attracts armies. The same route that brings scholars and silk may bring siege engines and horsemen. The city at the crossroads hears the future earlier than other places, but it also hears danger sooner. Some lost road cities are quieter. Dura Europos on the Euphrates, founded in the Hellenistic period and later controlled by Parthian and Roman powers, stands along a frontier river corridor where cultures meet. Its preserved wall paintings, religious buildings, military remains, and inscriptions reveal a remarkable mixture of Greek, Semitic, Roman, Parthian, Jewish, Christian, and local elements. It was not one of the largest cities of antiquity, but it is one of the most revealing because sudden abandonment and burial help preserve traces that would otherwise have vanished. The evidence remains incomplete, yet what survives shows how roots of empire and frontier life could produce dense cultural contact in a relatively small place. There are also cities lost because nature changes the road beneath them. Rivers shift course, harbours silt, coastlines move. A port once open to ships becomes trapped inland or choked by sediment. A river crossing loses importance when the water finds another channel. Fields that fed passing caravans dry under climate pressure or poor management. In such cases, the city may decline without a dramatic sack or famous last battle. It simply becomes less necessary. A place built by movement can die from stillness. The ruins of these cities make ancient roads visible in human form. A road alone may be only a line, but a city along it shows what connection did to people, how they stored goods, worshipped gods, borrowed styles, measured wealth, feared outsiders, welcomed strangers, and adapted to change. Lost cities are the blossoms of ancient roads, and their ruins are the dried petals left when traffic moves away. They remind us that roads do not merely connect empires. They create the places where empires touch, bargain, imitate, misunderstand, and sometimes destroy one another. A city at the crossroads may look like the most visible child of an ancient road, but the road's most decisive cargo is often less impressive than silk, incense, gold, or carved stone. It is information, a command leaving a palace, a warning carried from a frontier, a tax report sealed in clay or wax, a spy's memory of troop numbers, a rumour of rebellion, a plea for reinforcements, a list of grain stores, a notice that a bridge has failed. These are the things that make roads dangerous in a different way. Empires do not survive only by moving objects. They survive by moving knowledge quickly enough that rulers can act before distance turns authority into fiction. Every great empire has to solve the same problem the centre cannot see the edges. A king in Persepolis, Rome, Nineveh, Chang'an, Cuzco, or Constantinople may claim distant provinces, but claim is not control. Somewhere beyond the capital, a governor may grow too ambitious. A frontier tribe may raid, a harvest may fail, a tax collector may steal, a garrison may mutiny, or a neighbouring power may begin moving troops. Without roads, news of these things travels slowly, unevenly, and often too late. With roads, the empire gains something like nerves, Pain at the edge can travel inward. Orders from the centre can travel back. The body of the state does not become all-knowing, but it becomes harder to surprise. This is why official messenger systems appear again and again across ancient states, even when their forms differ. The Persian relay network, the Roman cursus publicus, the Chinese imperial courier and post road systems, and the Inca runner system across the Andes all reveal a similar understanding. Speed belongs to power. Horses, mules, camels, boats, runners, stations, storehouses, roads, bridges, passes, and written authorizations turn movement into administration. In some places, couriers change animals at stations. In others, runners carry messages in relays over mountain roads. In others, boats and roads combine, with messages moving by river for one stretch and by land for another. The evidence remains incomplete for many details, especially in earlier periods. But what survives in the record suggests that no large empire could ignore the political value of organized communication. The people who carry these messages live in a strange position. They are often ordinary bodies serving extraordinary systems. A courier may not understand the full importance of the sealed order he carries, yet the fate of a province may depend on his speed. A runner may know only that the message must reach the next station before night. A horse handler may spend his life replacing exhausted animals for officials he never meets again. A road station keeper may hear fragments of imperial crisis long before local farmers understand that anything has changed. Through these people, the empire moves in pieces. Its commands are not abstractions. They are sweat, saddles, worn sandals, fresh animals, guarded gates, and lamps burning late in administrative rooms. Spies and informants also belong to the road. They rarely leave monuments, and their traces are difficult to separate from ordinary travel, which is part of their usefulness. A merchant may notice troop movements. A pilgrim may carry news between cities. A deserter may reveal weaknesses. A local guide may serve one army today and another tomorrow. Official agents may move under permission, while unofficial observers travel under the cover of trade, diplomacy, or religion. Scholars still debate how formalized ancient intelligence systems were in different empires, and the evidence varies widely. But no ruler dealing with distant rivals could afford ignorance. Roads create the possibility of observation at scale. They allow information to be gathered, tested, distorted, and weaponized. Moving armies are the most visible expression of this same principle. An army is not only soldiers, it is food, water, fodder, weapons, pack animals, carts, engineers, servants, camp followers, medical knowledge, armor repair, scouting, discipline, and time. A road makes military movement faster, but it also creates dependence. Armies following roads can be supplied more easily, but they can also be predicted. Bridges become targets, passes become traps, wells become strategic prizes. An army that controls the road controls not only movement but the rhythm of a campaign. It can decide when to strike, where to wait, and which city must panic first. Rome's roads show this with brutal clarity. Legions move along routes originally built or improved for military access, and provinces feel the pressure of that mobility. Rebellion becomes harder when the state can send trained soldiers quickly along known corridors. Yet civil war reveals the other side. Roman armies fighting Roman armies use the same roads, the same bridges, the same supply towns, the same milestones. Infrastructure built for imperial unity becomes the stage for imperial fracture. No single explanation fully accounts for Rome's political crises, but roads make those crises physically possible across wider distances. Ambition can march faster when the road has already been prepared. Tax collectors travel these systems too, and their movement may be more resented than that of soldiers. Taxes are the bloodstream of empire, but to the people who pay them they can feel like slow extraction. Grain, animals, coin, labour, textiles, and local produce move towards centres of power through road networks. Officials arrive with records and expectations, weighing, counting, sealing, and transporting turn harvests into imperial revenue. The road makes the distant ruler present at the village threshing floor. It can bring market opportunity, but it can also carry away what a family had hoped to keep. The same road that brings imported goods can leave local granaries thinner. Refugees move on these roads when the machinery of power breaks. Their journeys are less carefully recorded, but they may be among the most common in times of crisis, when armies approach, when cities are sacked, when drought empties fields, when taxation becomes unbearable, when disease burns through settlements. People take the roads because roads lead somewhere known. They flee toward relatives, temples, fortified towns, ports, mountains, or simply away from smoke. Ancient records often focus on kings and campaigns, but the roads remember quieter disasters, families carrying bedding, tools, children, images of gods, bags of seed, and whatever could not be left behind. What survives in the record suggests that forced movement, deportation, enslavement, and flight was central to the lived reality of many imperial roads. Fear itself travels by road. A rumour of invasion can outrun the invaders. News of a massacre can empty villages before soldiers arrive. The sight of official messengers riding hard can make people wonder what has gone wrong. A column of troops passing through a town changes the air even if no violence occurs. In connected worlds, imagination becomes mobile. People fear not only what is present, but what the road may bring next. This is the hidden pulse beneath the ancient highways and caravan routes. Goods make roads profitable, armies make them powerful, but messages make them alive. Through roads, empires listen, threaten, demand, react, and remember. Through roads, ordinary people learn that distant events can enter their lives without warning. A road may begin as a path through landscape, but under empire it becomes a line through human nerves, carrying signals of command, suspicion, hunger, loyalty, rebellion, and dread. The stronger the road becomes, the more dangerous its gifts begin to look. At first, the logic seems simple. A road binds the empire together. It carries soldiers toward trouble, tax toward the capital, orders toward governors, grain toward hungry cities, and merchants toward markets. It shortens the distances that would otherwise weaken rule. But the same connection that allows a state to function also allows crisis to travel. When pressure builds in one region, the road does not keep that pressure contained, it gives it direction. Rebellion, plague, invasion, rumour, inflation, hunger, and fear can move along the same lines that once carried wealth and authority. The highway that makes empire possible can become the channel through which empire begins to fail. This does not mean roads cause collapse by themselves. No serious explanation of ancient collapse can rest on one factor alone. Scholars still debate the fall of different empires because the evidence remains incomplete, and because political systems break under combinations of stress rather than single blows. Climate shifts, leadership failures, military defeats, disease, debt, social inequality, overextension, changing trade patterns, migration, and environmental damage can all matter at once. But roads shape how these stresses spread. They turn local trouble into regional trouble. They make distant crises arrive sooner. They connect the wounds. Rebellion is one of the clearest examples. A province cut off by mountains, deserts, or poor roads may be difficult to govern, but it may also be difficult for rebellion to spread beyond its own valleys. A connected province is different. News of discontent can move between towns. Messengers can seek allies. Rebels can seize bridges, gates, road stations, and supply depots. If they control the road, even briefly, they can interrupt the state's sense of certainty. An empire may still have armies, but armies must travel. A governor may still have authority, but authority must be delivered. In this way, roads create strategic pressure points. A bridge is not just a bridge. A pass is not just a pass. A station is not just a place to change horses. Each can become a throat through which imperial power must breathe. The Roman world knows this danger well. Its roads allow legions to suppress unrest, but they also allow rival generals to move quickly during civil wars. A road that carries troops to defend a frontier can later carry those same troops toward Rome itself. Ambition follows infrastructure. In the late Republic and later imperial crises, military mobility becomes both a strength and a threat. The empire can respond quickly to enemies. But generals with loyal armies can also respond quickly to opportunity. No single explanation fully accounts for Rome's repeated civil conflicts. Yet the road network gives those conflicts a physical stage. Power can no longer remain local once the routes are open. A decision made by soldiers in one province may march toward the heart of the state. Invasion follows similar patterns. Invaders do not always avoid roads. Often they seek them. Roads lead to food, towns, bridges, depots, and political targets. They show where the empire expects movement to happen. A frontier road meant to support defense may guide attackers toward vulnerable settlements if border control weakens. Forts can delay movement, but if they are undermanned, bypassed, or betrayed, the road behind them becomes an invitation. The same engineered clarity that helps imperial logistics can help enemy logistics once control slips. This is one of the oldest ironies of infrastructure. Building a route through difficult land gives the builder power only while the builder can hold it. Disease travels even more quietly. A plague has no respect for milestones, customs posts, imperial seals, or sacred boundaries. It moves with bodies, animals, insects, grain shipments, armies, ships, caravans, refugees, and markets. Ancient people did not understand microbes in the modern sense, but they knew that sickness often followed movement, crowding, and contact. The exact paths of ancient epidemics remain debated, and the evidence can be difficult to interpret from texts alone. But connection clearly increases reach. A port city receives ships from many regions. A road town hosts travellers from many districts. An army gathers men from distant communities, then sends survivors, deserters, and supply workers outward again. What begins as illness in one place can become memory of catastrophe in many. The Antonine Plague in the Roman Empire, the later plague of Cyprian, and the much later Justinianic plague all show how connected worlds can suffer connected disasters. Though scholars still debate the exact pathogens and demographic effects in some cases, these events do not prove that roads alone destroy empires. They show that large-scale connectivity changes the scale of vulnerability. A village beyond major routes may suffer terribly and remain nearly invisible to history. A disease entering an imperial network can strike armies, tax systems, cities, farms, and political confidence across enormous distances. The road turns sickness into history. Economic strain also moves along highways. A road can enrich a province by linking it to markets, but it can also bind that province into demands it cannot control. If a capital depends on grain from distant lands, then drought, piracy, war, corruption, or transport failure in one region becomes a crisis elsewhere. If an army depends on supplies moving along certain corridors, local communities near those routes may be squeezed again and again. Roads make extraction efficient. They allow states to collect taxes, requisition animals, move labour, and concentrate wealth. At their best, they support exchange and stability. At their worst, they become instruments of exhaustion. There is a lesser-known kind of collapse that begins not with dramatic destruction, but with maintenance failure. Roads are not built once, they must be repaired. Bridges rot or crack, culverts clog, floods wash out embankments, desert wells need cleaning, mountain paths need clearing after landslides, stations need animals, fodder, guards, and officials. A strong state can make this work because it can organize labour and resources across distance. A weakening state may still possess the road on paper while losing the ability to keep it alive. The surface remains, but reliability disappears. A merchant hears that one bridge is unsafe, that one station has no fresh animals, that one pass is no longer guarded, that one town has been raided. He chooses another route. Enough choices like that, repeated quietly, can pull life away from a road without any formal announcement. When roads fail, they often fail unevenly. A main artery may remain usable near the capital while distant branches decay. Military routes may be maintained while local market roads crumble. A wealthy city may repair its own approaches while poorer districts are left to mud and bandits. The map of movement begins to shrink. Places once connected become far away again, not because the miles have changed, but because trust has changed. People stop believing that the road will deliver them safely. And once trust is lost, a road becomes only ground. The collapse of road systems is therefore not always visible as a broken pavement or abandoned milestone. It is visible in fewer travellers, smaller markets, slower messages, nervous officials, fortified villages, and cities that begin to look inward. The empire may still speak in the language of unity, but the road tells a different story. It carries less grain, fewer letters, more soldiers, more refugees, more fear. The same line that once proved the empire could reach everywhere begins to reveal where it no longer can. In the end, roads do not simply connect lost empires. They record the moment when connection becomes strain, when speed becomes exposure, and when the arteries of power begin carrying the signs of illness back toward the heart. When an ancient road stops carrying travellers, it does not immediately become invisible. It enters a slower life. Stones settle, ruts fill, bridges collapse into streams, grass creeps across paving, farmers pry up blocks for walls, houses, barns, churches, mosques and field boundaries. Desert winds soften edges that once guided caravans. Forests take back straight lines with roots and shade. In a few generations, people may still know the road's name. In a few centuries, they may only know that a certain track feels older than the rest, that a certain field has stones beneath the plough, that a lane runs too straight to be accidental. Then even that memory thins, and the road becomes a problem for archaeologists how to find a line made by movement when movement itself has vanished. The most obvious clues are the monumental ones: Roman milestones, Persian administrative centres, Inca tambos, caravanserais, way stations, forts, bridges, culverts, gates, and paved surfaces can all reveal where important routes once ran. A milestone may seem simple, only a stone beside a road, but it can preserve a ruler's name, a distance, a repair campaign, or a political claim carved into geography. A collapsed bridge can show where a river crossing mattered. A fort near a pass may indicate that movement through that pass was valuable enough to defend. A roadside inn or station may reveal the expected pace of travel, the needs of animals, and the state's desire to control who moved and why. These are the loud clues, the ones that still speak even after centuries of weather. But many roads leave quieter evidence. Wheel ruts cut into bedrock can survive where carts follow the same line for years, sometimes centuries. In places, ancient wheels wore grooves so deep that later travellers were almost forced to follow them. These ruts are practical marks, but they are also strangely intimate. They preserve not the name of a king, but the repeated weight of ordinary transport carts loaded with grain, stone, wine, timber, or household goods. Footpaths may survive as hollow ways, sunken lanes worn down by traffic and erosion, until the road sinks below the surrounding fields. In wet landscapes, old roads may appear as raised causeways. In dry ones, they may survive as compacted strips where vegetation grows differently, because the soil beneath has been pressed hard by generations of passage. Archaeologists also follow object. A road may be gone, but the things dropped beside it can remain. Coins, pottery fragments, broken amphora, lost tools, animal bones, beads, nails, horseshoes, weapons, and scraps of imported material can form a trail of human presence. A single coin proves little by itself. It may have been carried far from any major route. But patterns matter. A scatter of coins from different periods near a pass, a line of pottery across desert stations. Repeated finds of imported goods along a river corridor. These can suggest traffic. The evidence remains incomplete, and scholars still debate many route reconstructions because objects can move in complicated ways. Yet when artifacts, landscape, and known settlements align, the vanished road begins to reappear. Fortifications are especially revealing. Empires rarely build forts at random. A chain of small forts across a frontier, a watchtower overlooking a valley, a fortified station near a desert well, or a garrison post beside a bridge can expose the nervous system of control. Roads and forts belong together because movement must be watched. In the Roman world, roads near frontiers often connect military sites, supply depots, and river crossings in desert regions. Forts may guard wells or caravan corridors. In the Andes, storehouses and way stations along road systems show how state logistics worked in steep and difficult terrain. What survives in the record suggests that control of movement was often as important as control of land itself. Plants can help reveal roads too, which is a detail easily missed because it sounds too delicate for such a heavy subject. Pollen, seeds, charcoal, and soil chemistry can show how environments changed around roads. A road may bring new crops, grazing animals, weeds, or fuel use into a region. Repeated animal traffic can alter vegetation. Camps may leave traces of burning. Dung from pack animals can preserve evidence of fodder and movement in some landscapes. Old roads influence drainage so strongly that plant patterns remain different long after the road has stopped functioning. Archaeology is not only about stone and metal, sometimes it is about the faint biological memory of disturbance. Remote sensing has changed the search dramatically. From the air, old routes can appear as crop marks, soil marks, shadow lines, or subtle changes in elevation. Satellite imagery allows researchers to trace ancient paths across deserts, fields, and difficult terrain at scales impossible from the ground alone. LiDAR can see through forest cover by mapping tiny variations in surface height, revealing causeways, roads, terraces, and settlement patterns hidden beneath trees. In some regions, especially where jungle or woodland has swallowed ancient infrastructure, this has transformed understanding of how extensive past networks really were. A road once thought to connect only a few sites may turn out to be part of a much larger system of settlements, fields, reservoirs, and movement corridors. Yet technology does not remove uncertainty. A straight line seen from above may be an ancient road, a modern track, a pipeline, a field boundary, a natural feature, or a coincidence. A promising route must still be tested on the ground. Archaeologists walk the land, examine stones, dig trenches, date materials, compare old maps, study place names, and look for relationships between settlements and terrain. No single method fully accounts for a road's history. A satellite image may suggest the line, pottery may suggest the date, a fort may suggest the function, soil may suggest repeated use. Only together do these clues become persuasive. Sometimes the absence of evidence is almost as meaningful as its presence. A major city with few surrounding roads may suggest that its roots were riverine or maritime rather than land-based. A gap in a road system may reveal where erosion, later agriculture, urban building, or flooding erased the traces. A route that seems logical on a modern map may never have been important, because ancient travellers preferred water, pasture, safety, or political permission over geometric efficiency. Modern eyes love straight lines and shortest distances, but ancient movement often obeyed other rules. A road was not simply where the map looks neat, it was where people could actually pass. The work of reconstructing broken roads is therefore a kind of historical listening. Archaeologists listen to stones, soil, ruins, objects, plant remains, old names, and the shape of valleys. They follow fragments that do not speak loudly alone. A broken milestone in a field, a row of wells in a desert, a scatter of pottery beside a dry riverbed, a sunken lane behind a village, a line of forts across a frontier, each is only a clue. Together, they restore motion to a still landscape. They allow the lost empires to become connected again, not as they appear on imperial maps, but as they were experienced by travellers stage by stage, hazard by hazard, crossing by crossing, until a vanished road begins once more to lead somewhere. A road can vanish for many reasons, and the most misleading reason is age alone. Old roads do not disappear simply because they are old. Some survive for thousands of years in desert crust, mountain stone, village lanes, or under modern highways that unknowingly repeat ancient decisions. Other roads, younger and once busy, fade so thoroughly that only a few clues remain. Time matters, but time is not the whole explanation. Roads vanish when the conditions that made them useful vanish. A road is kept alive not by its stones, but by need. When need changes, traffic thins. When traffic thins, maintenance weakens. When maintenance weakens, nature and human scavenging begin their slow work. The death of a road is often not a single event. It is a long conversation between landscape, politics, economy, violence, and forgetfulness. Climate is one of the quiet forces behind disappearance. A route across dry country depends on water, even when it appears to cross emptiness. Wells, springs, seasonal pools, oases, and grazing grounds are the hidden joints of desert movement. If rainfall patterns shift, if aquifers drop, if wells silt or turn saline, a caravan road can become dangerous before it becomes impossible. Travellers may try to adapt, carrying more water, changing seasons, using different animals, or stopping at fewer places, but there are limits to endurance. A route that once took several difficult but survivable stages may become a gamble no merchant wants to take. Scholars still debate the exact role of climate in the decline of many ancient routes, because environmental change rarely acts alone, but what survives in the record suggests that even modest shifts in water reliability could redirect movement across harsh landscapes. In greener regions, climate can erase roads differently. Increased rainfall may turn tracks to mud, flood river crossings, or make maintenance too costly. Drought can weaken agricultural settlements that once supplied travellers. A road through fields needs communities along it. Farmers to sell grain, stable owners to feed animals, workers to repair bridges, guards to watch dangerous places. If harvests fail repeatedly, the road loses its support system. The paving may remain, but the living world around it contracts. A traveller does not avoid a road only because the surface is broken. He avoids it because the inns are empty, the wells are uncertain, the villages are poor, and the next safe stop is too far away. Rivers are another cause of disappearance, and rivers are restless. They shift channels, flood plains, cut new banks, abandon old ports, and bury crossings beneath silt. A road built toward a ford can lose its purpose when the river deepens or moves. A bridge can become useless if the water abandons it. A harbour city can decline when sediment chokes its access to the sea. In river civilizations, the route is never fixed forever, because the water that makes settlement possible also rearranges the logic of movement. No single explanation fully accounts for the decline of every river port or crossing town, but many ancient places lose importance not because people forget them, but because the landscape quietly changes the terms of usefulness. Political collapse is more abrupt. An imperial road system depends on authority beyond the local community. Someone must organize labour, collect resources, protect travellers, settle disputes, repair bridges, maintain stations, and punish banditry. When the state weakens, these functions become uneven. The road may remain open near wealthy cities but become dangerous farther out. Local rulers may take control of short stretches, while longer distance coherence disappears. A merchant who once relied on imperial protection may now face tolls from several small powers, each claiming rights over the same journey. The road becomes fragmented. What had been one corridor becomes many little territories, each with its own risks. This does not always mean decline for everyone. Sometimes the fall of one empire opens opportunities for local routes. A grand imperial road may decay while smaller regional roads become more important. A port ignored by an old regime may thrive under a new one. Trade does not simply stop when empires fall. It searches for safer, cheaper, more profitable paths. This is why the disappearance of one road can be the birth of another. The map changes shape, not because people stop moving, but because they move differently. The evidence remains incomplete in many regions, yet archaeology often shows continuity beneath political breakage. Pottery still moves, people still trade, animals still cross passes, but the official road loses its privileged position. Warfare can kill a road quickly or slowly. A campaign may destroy bridges, burn stations, poison wells, or depopulate towns along a route. Siege and conquest can interrupt traffic for a season, a decade, or forever. In frontier zones, roads may become too exposed. Merchants avoid corridors associated with raids. Pilgrims choose other shrines. Farmers abandon fields near military routes because armies bring requisition, theft, and danger. A road does not need to be physically destroyed to vanish from normal life. It only needs to become feared. Fear changes geography as effectively as flood or drought. Trade rerouting may be the most subtle cause. A new sea route can weaken an old caravan road. A safer pass can empty a dangerous one. A political alliance can shift traffic toward favoured cities. A new market demand can make one region valuable, while another loses its appeal. When maritime trade increases in certain periods, some inland caravan centres suffer. When steppe routes become unstable, merchants may prefer southern corridors. When a port silts up, Another port inherits its ships. These changes are rarely immediate. For a while, old and new routes coexist. Then one receives more investment, more guards, more inns, more trust. The other becomes old not in years, but in relevance. Neglect completes what larger forces begin. A road without regular use becomes vulnerable to small damages that accumulate. A broken culvert causes flooding. Flooding undercuts the surface. A fallen tree blocks a section. Travellers create a detour. The detour becomes the new path. Villagers take paving stones because good stone is too useful to leave unused. Farmers plough across the edges. Builders reuse milestones in walls. A station becomes a sheepfold. A bridge arch collapses and no one has the authority or money to rebuild it. The road does not disappear in a dramatic ruinous instant. It is taken apart by practicality. Yet some roads vanish on maps while surviving in behaviour. A modern highway may follow an ancient corridor because the mountain pass is still the best crossing. A national border may trace older zones of movement and control. A pilgrimage road may reuse a pre-imperial track. A village lane may lie over Roman paving, which lies over an older path, which lies over an even older animal trail. The names change. The surface changes. The empires vanish. But the landscape still guides movement through the same narrow choices. What appears lost may be hidden beneath continuity. This is why vanished roads are difficult to define. A road can die as an institution while surviving as a path. It can disappear physically while remaining in memory. It can be forgotten by historians while used daily by people who do not know its age. It can be abandoned for centuries, then rediscovered by archaeologists from a shadow in crops or a line of stones in the desert. Roads vanish when the world that needed them changes, but they rarely vanish completely. They leave traces in soil, settlement, fear, habit, and the strange stubbornness of human movement. Even disappearance for a road is usually not an ending. It is a change of surface. The strange thing about ancient roads is that many of them never truly leave. They change names, surfaces, rulers, languages, and purposes, but they continue to guide movement long after the empires that built or claimed them have disappeared. A modern highway may follow the logic of a Roman road because the valley still opens in the same direction. A railway may run beside an older caravan corridor because mountains still force traffic through the same pass. A city street may lie over medieval paving, which lies over Roman stone, which lies over a pre-Roman track that once followed a ridge to avoid winter mud. The surface belongs to the present, but the decision beneath it may be ancient. People think they are choosing the fastest way across a landscape, yet often the landscape, and the dead who learned it first, have already narrowed the choice. This legacy is visible in Europe, where many modern routes still echo Roman planning, even when the original pavement is buried or gone. Some roads retain names that preserve memory directly, others survive only as alignments, parish boundaries, field edges, or unusually straight lanes cutting through countryside. Cities that were Roman forts, road junctions, river crossings, or market towns remain inhabited because the old reasons for gathering there never completely vanished. A crossing is still useful. A harbour is still useful. A pass is still useful. An administrative centre may become a bishop's city, then a medieval town, then a modern provincial capital, because once roads and institutions gather in one place, they create a gravity that is difficult to undo. The same pattern appears far beyond Rome, in the Middle East, routes shaped by Mesopotamian, Persian, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, and Ottoman worlds often overlap, diverge, and reunite across the same broad corridors. In Central Asia, modern roads and railways sometimes follow the old necessities of water, passes, and oasis chains. even when the cargo has changed from silk and horses to fuel, machinery, cotton, minerals, and manufactured goods. In the Andes, sections of ancient paths remain visible in stone stairways, terraces, highland routes, and community memory. In North Africa and Arabia, old caravan logic survives wherever wells, ports, and desert margins still shape settlement. What survives in the record suggests that the deepest roads are not always the ones best preserved in stone, but the ones that continue to make sense. Modern borders also carry shadows of old roads. Empires often formed around corridors of movement, and later states inherited those corridors as strategic realities. A frontier may harden where older zones of travel, trade, and military pressure once met. A mountain pass may remain politically sensitive for thousands of years because whoever controls it controls passage between worlds. A river crossing may become a fortified border town, then a customs point, then a modern bridge guarded by cameras instead of soldiers. The technology changes, but the geography of control feels familiar. Roads teach rulers where power must watch. Trade corridors today are often imagined as new creations of modern globalization, but many revive ancient instincts. Pipelines, shipping lanes, rail projects, highways, and port expansions frequently follow the same broad patterns that ancient merchants understood move through narrow seas, connect river basins, cross passes, link resource zones to consumers, and turn choke points into wealth. The cargo moves faster now. Messages travel almost instantly. Maps glow on screens instead of being carried in memory. Yet the old problem remains: distance must be organized before power can use it. No single explanation fully accounts for why some corridors endure across millennia, while others vanish. But geography, habit, investment, security, and accumulated settlement all matter. A road with people around it becomes easier to renew than a road that must begin from silence. There is also a quieter legacy in culture. Roads leave behind mixtures. Languages borrow words along trade routes. Food traditions move with merchants, soldiers, pilgrims, and migrants. Religious ideas follow paths of hospitality and danger. Artistic styles cross borders not as pure forms, but as fragments altered at every stop. A pattern on cloth, a spice in a kitchen, a saint's shrine on an older sacred site, a market day arranged around travellers, a town festival tied to a former pilgrimage. All may preserve traces of roads that no longer appear on official maps. Scholars still debate many of these connections, because influence is difficult to prove and easy to exaggerate. But the broader truth is clear roads do not only carry things, they change the meaning of places. The roads beneath us also challenge the way empires are remembered. Maps often show ancient states as coloured blocks, as though power filled territory evenly. Roads reveal a different reality. Empires were not solid masses. They were networks, stronger along arteries and weaker in the spaces between. A capital might command a road, a river, a port, and a chain of forts, while villages only a short distance away lived with much looser ties to imperial authority. Roads expose the skeleton beneath the painted map. They show where power actually moved, where it hesitated, where it concentrated, and where it failed. This is why the study of ancient roads continues to change. Satellite imagery, excavation, ancient texts, environmental science, and local knowledge keep revealing routes once forgotten or misunderstood. A pale line in desert gravel may turn out to connect abandoned forts. A sunken lane may preserve centuries of travel. A cluster of coins may redraw a trading corridor. A port ruin may show that a supposedly remote region was tied to distant seas. the evidence remains incomplete, and it always will, because movement leaves fragile traces. But each rediscovered road pulls lost empires closer to one another again. It reminds us that the ancient world was not a collection of isolated monuments. It was alive with motion. And perhaps that is the most enduring legacy. Beneath modern movement, beneath engines, asphalt, rail, shipping containers, airports, and digital maps, the old pattern remains human. People still gather where roads meet. Cities still rise at crossings. Wealth still follows corridors. Fear still moves along routes. Power still depends on reaching the edges before the edges drift away. The ancient roads that connected lost empires are not only ruins behind us. They are part of the hidden design of the world still being travelled now. When the journey slows, the road remains. It lies beneath dust, beneath grass, beneath stone lanes polished by feet that never knew the names of the first travellers. It passes ruined stations where no horse waits, dry wells where no caravan lowers a rope, broken bridges where rivers continue without caring who once crossed them. The empires are gone, their languages thin into inscriptions, their kings become dates, names, fragments, museum labels, arguments between scholars, but the road keeps a different kind of memory, less proud and more patient. It remembers weight, it remembers direction, it remembers the human need to reach beyond the nearest hill. There is something gentle and unsettling in that. Civilizations often imagine their roads as proof of permanence. Stone paving, milestones, relay stations, harbours, gates, and causeways all seem to say that order had conquered distance, yet distance always waits. Sand returns, forests return, rivers move, snow closes the pass, the sea swallows wrecks without ceremony. A road lasts only while people continue to believe in the place it leads. When that belief fades, the road begins to sleep. Still, sleep is not the same as death. A shepherd may follow an imperial route without knowing it. A child may walk to school over ground once crossed by soldiers and merchants. A truck may climb a pass where pack animals once stumbled in thin air. A market may still stand where strangers met long before anyone drew a modern border. The past does not always survive as a monument. Sometimes it survives as convenience, as habit, as the easiest line through a difficult world. The ancient roads teach a quiet lesson about connection. Every empire wants to be remembered by its palaces, victories, and rulers. But its truest shape may be found in the paths people used every day: the grain road, the salt trail, the pilgrim way, the courier route, the desert track between wells. These were the lines where history became ordinary, where power entered villages, where foreign goods appeared in markets, where rumours arrived before armies, where strangers became possible. And so the final image is not a throne, not a battlefield, not a city burning at the edge of collapse. It is a road at dusk, almost empty, running between dark hills toward a horizon already losing its light. No empire stands there now. No royal messenger rides hard through the dust. But the line remains, faint and stubborn, pointing onward through the silence, carrying the memory of everyone who once believed the world continued just a little farther ahead.